introduce my colleague and my partner in crime, Judy Carson, and she's going to welcome everyone here for Friday Cafe. We're nice and cozy, and this should be a great morning.
Great. Thank you, Betsy. And Betsy, my partner in crime, and thank you to CREC for making all this possible and for being our co-sponsor of Friday Cafe. I really think that together we can change the experiences of children and families in our schools. And I heard a quote just recently that says, if we care about children, we should take care of their parents really well. And I truly believe that. And I think we're the people here and as part of our network that can do that together. So in order to do this work, we know our why, and this is the how we're doing it, expanding our thinking and building our connections. But go through one more, Betsy. And you can just click through that whole slide. Thank you. And so as facilitators of your network, we just have a few values, a few ground rules that help us do this work together. And there's a couple more. And I think especially in the times we're going through right now, this last one, restorative, has been really important. And I think to do the work we're doing, to nurture the families, to be with the children and everything that's going on in our schools and communities, I do think it's not selfish to take a moment out for ourselves. In fact, we are obligated to take care of ourselves so we can continue to do this work in our communities. So as Betsy says, this is the oxygen mask. And so I appreciate you did take time out of your day to be here, and I do hope it's going to be fulfilling for you, and I have all the confidence in the world it's going to be. So let me click through one more slide, and this I need to bring to your attention if you don't know already. Connecticut has a new framework and a definition for family engagement. I encourage you to go online and download it. If you just search on Connecticut Family Engagement definition. If you have trouble finding it, let me know. It's a little hard to navigate on our website, but I'll direct you right to it. But this is our definition, and we're going to be working with this today. And this came from the field. It came from focus groups with families. It came from professionals. And what we're talking about is a full, equal, and equitable partnership. And we've been doing a lot of work in Friday Cafe. Our last session was on culturally relevant family engagement, culturally responsive family engagement. And we're working with this word, what does equitable mean? And I think that's really the way our field is going. That's the way much of what we're talking about in innovation and education is going. And today we're going to focus on, let me push through one more slide, Betsy, another aspect of equitable. And this is about building relationships in a way that's responsive to families. You're not going to have a partnership without trust and respect, right? It can't be done. That's not a real partnership. And if we create environments where families can really feel safe, where they can feel heard, where they can bring to us their cares and concerns that are some of the most precious because it's about their child, then we're going to be able to build that partnership that really pays off for our families and children and for the work we need to do in schools. And so today I'm really thrilled to introduce a longtime colleague and friend and someone who is expert and has just a range of expertise to share with us and knowledge. And Lauri DiGalbo has been doing this work in disabilities for many years and through many different lenses. And so today she's going to talk with us about that very first step that's foundational. That very first step before we start with the list of things we'd like to do together and the packet of materials and the great things you can do at home. We have to have a relationship. We have to have a conversation going. And so this is the very foundational work that's so crucial. And I'm really pleased that we have Lauri here to guide us in this work this morning. So thank you. Let me introduce Lauri DiGalbo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hi. You guys don't mind if I put my stuff here, do
I
you?
have the mic.
Thank you.
All right.
I got one. I'm good.
Oh, you have one.
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm hooked.
Then I'm doing the tech.
Okay. All right. So as Judy was talking, and she was talking about the new sites for Friday Cafe, I was thinking, Middletown, Connecticut, San Diego, or San Mateo? Just thinking, where would you want to be this morning? Although this is a lovely place, and cozy. We are like very close, aren't we? Isn't this great? Are you good, Jude? Yeah.
We're good?
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So, engaging families. First of all, let me ask you this. How many of you are actively working on the ground with families individually? Are you really? You guys, we don't pay you enough. I just need to say. You do such, it's true. It's true. Is it hard work? It's great work, but it's hard work, isn't it? What we find about engagement of families, that's real, or engagement of people, humans, is that we as public policy folks and as service providers find ourselves so often developing wonderful programs for people and great opportunities. And for example, having families engage with their children certainly is a wonderful thing, and engage with them in their learning process is even better. And so we move forward and we create wonderful programs for that. And we invite parents to become equitable partners. Yay for us. Not so yay for them. Not all the time. And so when we ask folks to come and join us, there are some families who have a very difficult time with that. And the reason for that is not that they don't want to engage, not that they don't want to be involved with their children's learning and with us and with their children's lives. It's that we all come from different perspectives. And in order for folks to begin to engage in any way, there are seats right up here. It's so good. It's like in school, you get to be nearest the teacher. Hi, honey, let me get your seat for you. So we want these folks to engage, but what we tend to do is we tell them about our programs. We tell them about the opportunities. We tell them about how cool is this. And they're thinking, I don't know, And part of that has to do with the very issue of equitability. When we invite people to be equal partners in perspectives that they're not sure of or understand, it makes people feel anxious. And so here's what we're going to do this morning. What I want to do is to talk a little bit about how we begin to engage folks. And it really comes not from anything that we do, but how they feel in our environment. They have to be able to think clearly and feel comfortable. There are things that we can do for that. And we're going to talk about some strategies. We're going to talk about their experiences. And we'll do that hopefully through your introspection. So you're going to take some little journeys with me, little stories we're going to go through. And with a little help from you and your good working brains this morning, you're going to experience what our families experience when they first engage, so that we can understand why it is some families just don't seem to be getting it, Do you have some families who you really want to have helping you and it's hard? They just can't understand what's needed from them. And they feel pretty badly about that, and we do as well. So we're going to go through that. We'll go through some strategies. We're going to talk about cognitive comfort, which is our ability to think. Okay? You all know that when you're stressed, thinking is tough. And we're going to talk about emotional comfort, that ability to settle in and to be comfortable. The good news about Friday Cafe for emotional comfort is that it's Friday and not Monday. We know that our emotions are much more malleable on Friday than Monday. And we also know that our thinking is much more relaxed on Friday than Monday. Our impulse control is also much more relaxed on Friday than Monday. So we tend to say stuff that we wouldn't say on Monday. So if you're sitting near your boss, just be careful. Be careful what you do. All right. So when we think about engaging families in their children's learning, who could argue with that, right? Learning, good thing. Family, good thing. But we all have our own perspectives, don't we? We all have our own experiences of what learning was, and we certainly have our own our expectations and perspectives about what family is for us. And people bring that to the table. And so as we say to families, how great it is you can engage in learning, they go right to, what was my learning like for me? Do you know? And so I'm going to use, it's so good because I use me as an example for almost everything. So you guys get to know a lot about me, or my family. I use them too and they get mortified, but nevertheless, we're going to use me. So I, as a student, loved kindergarten. I mean, honestly, it's my favorite grade right straight through graduate school. I got to tell you, kindergarten was great. I loved kindergarten because it was social. I got to sit with my boyfriend, Dell, short-lived, wherever you are today, under the teacher's desk on our little blankets and have cookies. It was great. I loved kindergarten. Then I went to first grade. I was so deceived. I thought school was going to be fun. I didn't think school was fun the rest of the time, especially because you had to learn stuff and you had to execute stuff. And so, you know, I loved every year that was social. First grade was horrible because I had to learn things and be good, and it was awful. Which leads us to the fact that even in graduate school, I had my advisor say, Lauri, you don't apply yourself. You know, still. So it's a theme for me. So when people say engage in learning, I'm like, oh, is it kindergarten? Because I'm good. Other than that, it's hard. So I bring that, and you all bring one too. And then we get to families. Well, families are a moving target, aren't they? We all love our families. Don't you love your family? I do too, but honestly, this time of year, it was the best thing in the whole world that they all went away. You know, I was four complete Thanksgiving dinners we did at my house for different members of the family because everybody gets their airtime. Then we marched into that ever so calm, collected holiday season, you know, trees, people, stuff. Oh my God. We took down our Christmas tree in my house on New Year's Day, and I was like handing people their coats, you know, Tom. Love to see you, looking for spring. So we all have different relationships with our families and our children. And that, when it comes together, the idea of engaging in an academic experience with professionals that would help your children do better in school is at once wonderful and terrifying. Because we believe in the equitability when we walk into the room. They walk into the room and see power people, holy crow, and not wanting to look stupid and not wanting to look bad and all those things, right? So engagement is really, the first step to engagement is how we deal with that experience. And what it is actually is stressful, right? And so stress is an interesting thing because stress is essential for life. We as humans have to be stressed in order to get out of bed in the morning. Stress is at one side excitement and at the other side anxiety. And so, look. Hi. See? Family. Now, I don't know what your relationship is, but I'm coming over to find out. No, it's not.
You get a hug, so what?
Do it. All right. So, I'm going to ask you to kind of take a little journey with me so that we can think about, I want to give you a sense, it's not an academic experience, it's a different experience, but I think it will bring you to a place where you can see the qualities of where we sometimes go wrong when we're trying to make this wonderful experience for families, okay? So, suspend your thoughts of reality and think this way. It's a Friday. Our phones are ringing. Pizza? Okay. So it's a Friday morning. We're at the Wadsworth Mansion. It's a lovely time, nice presentation, good coffee, nice pastry. Halfway through the morning, we take a break. At that break, your phone rings, and it's your very best friend in the whole world who has moved to St. Louis. Any of you from St. Louis? Good. Okay. Good. So we've moved to St. Louis. They've moved to St. Louis. They call you and they say, "I'm getting married tomorrow," and you think either, "Oh, thank God, finally," or oh my gosh, this is the 4th time and I'm hoping it works, you know? So you say, good, you know, good. And they say, but that's not all. I want you to come and stand up for me tomorrow in St. Louis. And you say, come on, it's a work day. I have family. I've got obligations. It's colder than hell outside here. I can't, no, I'm not going to, I can't. You come in, you get another cup of coffee, and you think to yourself, life is too short. I'm going to St. Louis. Now, this is the part, this little nugget here is the part that you may have trouble believing. You call your office and you tell your supervisor, I'm going to St. Louis this afternoon. And that person says, great, have a good time. Okay. So that's the part that may be a little unusual for you. But okay, so they say, great. So you come back in and you say to Judy Carson, listen, I'm leaving. You know, great time here, but I'm going to go, and I'm going to go to St. Louis. On your way home, you're not that you should be with your earbuds in or with your phone attached to your car, not holding it. You make a reservation on cheapo airline, whatever it is, because you know you got an overextended credit card from the holidays already. So and you get a seat on a plane, probably the last seat by the bathroom in the back, but nevertheless you got a seat on the plane. You go home, you pack real quick because it's only a day or two. Something nice to wear for the wedding, and then some other clothes. You get in the car, you're halfway to Bradley, and you realize you left your phone home. Okay? All right, you say, I can't go back for it, right? I can do this, you say. You fly to St. Louis. It's a lovely flight. You get to St. Louis, never been there before. You have to rent a car. But you know the credit card is overextended, and so you get a car on the cheap, and it's a little car, it's a cute car, but it has no nav. So no phone, no nav, and you have an hour to get to St. Mary's Church, which is where they're having this little, you know, kind of rehearsal thing that you have to be there because you're standing up for the person. So you get out, you take the driveway out of the airport, you turn right, you go into the very first convenience store you can find, and you walk up to the gentleman or lady behind the counter and you say to them, can you tell me how to get to St. Mary's Church? And that person says, of course. And you go, oh, thank God. All right. So then the person says, he says, okay, all right, so here you go. You get in your car, go right out of the parking lot. Go to the 4th light. The first 2 lights will probably be blinking. Try to ignore them. The 3rd one may not be working at all, but the 4th one is good. So get to the 4th light. When you get to the 4th light, take a left. You'll see a strip mall on your right. Go past that, probably 3.5, 4 miles. There's a roundabout. You know, so go around the roundabout. Don't go all the way though, only 3/4 of the way. And then take the skid exit down the road, and you'll be on the street where you need to go. You go down the street, you go up the hill. At the very top of the hill, there's a brick church. That's not it. Go around that church. Go around that church. Down the road, up another hill, there's a white church on the right. That's St. Mary's. But don't go in the front, because you know when you go in the front of St. Mary's, they never let you in the sacristy. You can't get in. So go around to the back, park in the back parking lot, walk through, and you'll get to where you need to be. And you say, like the well-trained and kind person you are, thank you. And you get in your car and you drive out the driveway and you go to the right and you walk into the next convenience store and you say, how do I get to St. Mary's Church? So what's happened here, poor Judy, I'm going to do this because there we go. Okay, so what happened here? What happened here is, and what made you laugh was your anxiety rising. Because you realize that this is like way too much information and it's very, very hard, right? So cognitively, as our brains try to do what they do, number one, you've had an exciting opportunity. Okay, so you're excited and it's new. And new is wonderful, but it's a little scary. So you're on this road, it's a new opportunity. You go to an environment that you've never been before. Sound familiar? Like into the work, you know, the work that we do. You walk into that environment and someone says to you, welcome, or I can help you. And what happens is our anxiety goes down for that moment. It's like we open a little door that says everything's going to be all right, and then people start talking. Oh, dear God. So what happened was there was a rush to implementation. This person who started to talk with you started talking a lot and fast, knew the information they were talking about. You were smiling and nodding because you didn't. That's always a sign when people smile and nod, isn't it? They don't know what you're talking about. So, okay. So there was a rush to implementation. You raced off, and then you got there, and you rushed again. Brand new environment. You don't know the context in which he's speaking. So you can't picture where you're going. Unfamiliar language is being used, you know, unfamiliar language that we use all the time. I don't know about you, but you know what a skid exit is? No. Me neither. I was in Missouri, honest to God, it was Missouri. I was working in Missouri, and I needed to get from the hotel to where I was speaking. And the lady at the desk said, oh, be careful, because there'll be 3 skid exits. To me, a skid exit means we haven't plowed yet. Do you know what I mean? So, wow. So a skid, apparently in the Midwest, a skid exit is where you get off the exit ramp and you don't stop at the end of the exit. The people stop. The stop signs are for the people on the side roads. So you just keep on going. Which is an event in and of itself, but they've got it down so they don't kill themselves. So unfamiliar language. So then you begin to worry about the words you don't understand that are coming forward, right? So you know that's hard too. It's way too much information all at once. We know human brains are wonderful, but they're not exquisite. And what we know is that they sound a lot like phones. No, what we know is that they can only tolerate 3 things at a time when stressed. So we don't want to ever give people more than 3 things to do, 3 things to talk. 3 is a magic word. It's just a magic number. So we want to give people more, less than 3 or no more than 3. And unfortunately, for you guys, this fella gave you, like, I don't know, a bunch of information and a lot of color commentary, you know, like that you didn't need, because it distracted you from that. And we do that too, especially when we invite people in to our programs and they come and sit with us, and we start out with, let me tell you about the program. Here's the key. Nobody cares. You just need to know. People want to know, what can you do for me? You know, we don't care that you've got a grant from God knows who for how long. Good for you. And then it was help that didn't feel like help. It was. And in a little while, we're going to talk about your thank you response, but I'm going to save that for a little bit later. So what you experience in that moment of excitement and anticipation turning to abject anxiety and stress is what most of our families, and we do too in brand new environments. You and I, fall in this kind of middle of a bell-shaped curve, which means that we resolve from that. And the reason for that is that our brains have evolved well. Okay, our brains are healthy brains, so that we have the ability from a higher level thinking perspective to control ourselves, to take a moment, you know, and to relax. Women who have been in the business world know better than men that when we need to, like, recharge and you know, kind of blow off a little steam, where do we do that? It's the ladies' room, isn't it? We all run into the ladies' room and go, right? Guys don't do that. You guys don't run into the ladies' room. No, you don't. No. Good. No, and you probably don't run into the men's room and talk about that either. I don't know, but we do. So we have a pattern. What happens with folks who are not as able cognitively is that they don't have the ability to rebound, and that's honestly the only difference between a fully functional brain and a brain that is not so fully functional. So that's why we see folks continually over and over again have difficulties with the same thing. You know, they just haven't been able to resolve that. And why And what? Judy, thanks so much. Yeah, I am perfect. This slide, I'll just read these to you guys over here. Are you guys good? Okay, I will. Okay, so for our friends over here, the slide says, what impedes cognitive recovery? And then I'm going to talk about a bunch. Okay. So cognitive recovery is something that we all do. There are some life experiences that make cognitive recovery, or the ability to rest and think again, difficult for people. Some of it is tissue-based, meaning that bad things happen to your brain over time, and their brains have become unable to think exquisitely, which means, really to use the part of our brains that we talk about as frontal lobe cognition, executive functioning. So many of our families who we're engaging in teaching them to engage in their children's learning, teaching them how to be equal partners, have not had great life experiences, or they kind of wouldn't be in those situations. And so why do some of them have difficulty getting through our process and engaging with us? The first is, and these are some of the primary ones, although not all, trauma, we know, causes actual brain change in people. So for folks who have trauma, and serial trauma in particular, we can see on CAT scans and PET scans a change in brain tissue, which means that folks will have a harder time with a number of executive functioning skills like impulse control and planning and organizing and those kinds of things that are required to be a good team player, to be a good equal partner, especially in groups things, to follow through. All of those things can be difficult for them. Other things that obviously also impact that is lack of consistent education. And we see many families, or I assume you do, I certainly do, see many families whose parents haven't had consistent education. They may have moved a lot. They may be families who have immigrated to this country. Excuse me. They may be parents who as children did not have consistent education or consistent educational support, which leads us also to be a little concerned that they'll also be doubly stressed because we're asking them to be a partner in an educational environment, right? The experience of poverty. There's so much literature today about the experience of living an impoverished life that actually does affect how well people think. That does not mean that not having money makes you not a good thinker. Has nothing to do with having dollars. It has to do with the fact that a life of poverty can lead to the other things that I've listed, lack of good nutrition as a young person. And even as an older person, we know, I say this as an official older person, we know that in our lives, we as adults also still need consistent nutrition to keep our brains going, right? So that 17th cup of coffee you probably want to put down and drink water for the rest of the day. Lack of sleep also impairs cognition. Don't you guys know that? Yeah, how many of you have little ones at home? Hi, congratulations. Oh my gosh, how are you doing sleep-wise? Good.
It's a lot of coffee, but yeah.
A lot of coffee, there you go. Yep. So lack of sleep is difficult, and over time lack of sleep mounts up and can cause some tissue change. So for folks who really don't sleep over time, that's a concern for them. Certainly illness. Anytime you don't feel well, even if you've got like a cold, the norovirus, or like the flu or anything, we know you don't think well. If you have an ongoing illness, that consistently impacts your thinking. And of course, many disabilities. And the reason I put disability on here is that when we talk about cognitive limitations or difficulties thinking, people's heads, the general world goes immediately to, must be folks with intellectual disabilities, right? I need to stress as hard as I can that cognitive limitations has nothing to do with intelligence, okay? Nothing. You guys on a bad day look cognitively as bad as anybody else, and we know that. Do you know, I know that if I've been speaking for an entire week on the road, Somebody says hello to me on a Friday afternoon, and I look at them like a deer in the headlights. Do you know, I don't even know how to say hi anymore. So we know we get overstressed. Again, we can resolve. Some folks can't. So disability, surely. Substance use issues, mental health issues, attention issues, learning disability issues, autism spectrum issues, mental illness can all impact thinking, of course, because they're brain-based. But the people that surprise us are the people who aren't labeled. They're the people who we think should do just fine, and then they don't. And then we think, they're not trying, right? We do, because we're human. Of course we do. We just need to know that that probably, when it pops into our head, needs to be explored a little bit before we like jump on it and mention it to people. Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay. So this says pathway to cognitive comfort. So how do we begin to help folks cognitively? The interesting thing is that when we try to help individuals be comfortable, we tend to start with the emotional side, you know, trying to make them happy and comfortable. Really, the best thing that we can do is to get their brain thinking in the right way, and then more emotional comfort will come. Oftentimes, people become quite comfortable with us in terms of, you know, like relaxing, but still can't execute what we want them to do. And so if we want them to execute and be part of our networking, then we need to create the cognitive piece first. And so there are two issues that are benchmarks or the highway to good cognition or good thinking. And the first is pre-processing. We, as human beings, especially as we're more familiar with our content and our process, we'll jump right in to whatever we're doing, because that's our life and it's what we do with our work life. We don't tell people what to expect. And honestly, the one thing across the board that makes people relax cognitively and emotionally is to know what's coming, right? You know that. How many of you have gone to the doctor's office and you go up to the desk and you say, you know, I'm here for my 3 o'clock appointment, and they say, great, have a seat, doctor will be right with you. They don't tell you he's in surgery across town and won't be there for an hour and a half. So you sit for an hour and a half and you wait, and your anxiety goes up, bend up, bend up, bend up, right? And then they take you in, they say, come on in, Beth. See, you're so lucky you're here because you're my girl. They say, so Beth, come on in, you know, and they give you that little Johnny thing, and you take off all your clothes and you put that on in that cold room on that cold metal table. And yeah, it's 45 minutes, you know, I'm freezing in here. By the time the doctor arrives, number one, you don't want to see them. Number two, you're fairly snarky at the doctor, and you just as soon go home. So all they had to do was say to you, doctor's running late, and he's going to be about 2.5 hours. Would you like to reschedule? Or would you like to stay here and have that cold experience in the dressing room, in the examining room? So pre-processing is essential. And so pre-processing is what I did with you this morning when I said, this is what I'm going to do. We'll be talking for about an hour, or we're going to talk about strategies. You're going to take a couple little trips with me, and we'll see how that goes. To give you a sense of what's going on. Always pre-process every encounter. Don't assume that when you pre-process the kind of overview of kind of what you want the families to do and how you want them to participate, that they will remember it to the next time. It orients them. One of the most important things about cognitive orientation is that it allows people to drop what they're thinking about and listen to you. Because once our brains engage in, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing here, they can't also continue to think about what's going on at home. For that moment in time, they will be with you. Why is that? You know, because we can't multitask. Just so you know, our brains, you guys know this, as much as we try to fool ourselves by doing it, we don't multitask. Our brains don't. They can't. They don't know how. They don't do that. They go back and forth. which is why in our very busy multitasking world, we get less done now than we did before. Because we're going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and we're stressed to the max, right? So you want to pre-process. And when I pre-process with folks, one of the major things that I do is reorient them to who I am. And that sounds like a really stupid thing, because, I mean, they know who I am, right? It's the 4th time they've been here. But if I can sort of say something that reminds them of my role in their life, like I'll say, hi, it's so good to see you again. You know, last time when we were talking about your kids and the learning that they were doing, and you know, this is what we were talking about. I'll bring up something from last time to reorient them to this time and what we were doing at that time in my role, not social engagement. We make the mistake of engaging people socially before we engage them cognitively, and it's a mistake. Instead, you know, we hear things in people's lives and we think it's helpful when we say, oh, you know, last time when you were coming in, you were telling me you were going to buy a new car. How's the car? Not unless you're selling cars do you want to start out that way. You want to start out with, last time when you came in, we were talking about Johnny and engaging him in his homework at home. Tell me how that's going. Person goes, oh yeah. Now, clearly the person doesn't consciously go, oh yeah, now I know why I'm here, but their brain does. Brain goes, oh right, focus on this. So pre-processing is very important all the time. I now pre-process everything with my family, which they find incredibly tedious. We're going to have dinner. Remember dinner last night? My husband always says to me, let me show you the kitchen, honey, because you haven't learned it yet. All right. So, which those of you who know me know is the God's honest truth. It is true. So first is pre-processing. The second is plain language. And Judy and I first met, we were thinking maybe 10 years ago now, when we were working on an interagency collaboration when I was working for the state still. And it was on, you know, trying to infuse plain language into our agencies so that we'd actually talk in language that people could understand. As we looked at that, the most interesting thing was that we went back and found out that in the regulations in Connecticut, in the state statutes, 1987, we had language promulgated that all state agencies must speak in plain language to their customers. That's working well, don't you think? Wow. Wow. So we thought we were going to have this great opportunity to introduce plain language. Well, apparently it had been introduced before and nobody wanted to keep it. I don't know. So, but plain language for us is just talking like human beings. And the one that I will go to meetings often and sit and I watch for this language to come up. And it's usually when I only get invited to meetings when things are going badly. So you know, things have gone south with this family, and so now we're sort of annoyed with each other. And someone in the room who's a professional will say, the agency says that you have to do blankety blankety blank, and you haven't done it. I don't even get to the blankety blankety blank part. I'm concerned over the agency says, just so you know, agencies don't talk. I've never seen an agency talk. I've never seen a bureau talk. I've never seen a building talk. People talk. If you have a problem with someone, you say, I'm concerned that this isn't happening because I want you to be able to do whatever. I, me, not the agency. We hide behind the agency. We have rules, you know. Well, then we do, and the rules are important, but they're if I'm at the table and I'm representing my agency, they're my rules. And I'm the one who's having difficulty here. And, you know, and with your activity, and I want you to do better, you know. So people can understand that. The minute we say the agency or start talking about a lot of bureaucratic stuff, people zone out. They do. And they also feel that you don't care when you use bureaucratic language. That, you know, I mean, it's true. And we know that just from our interactions with the world. So plain language is important. Certainly there's language that goes with our profession that we want to use, but we need to define it. One of the things that Americans do or don't do that is done well in other cultures is that we don't instruct adults well. We find it rude, right? We don't say, I'd like to give you some more information about family networking, because sometimes it's confusing. We don't say that because we think people are going to go, they think I'm stupid. No, people actually appreciate it depending upon your delivery. Okay? Do you know, we have to watch our delivery. But people do appreciate it. Nobody wants to be in a situation where they don't know what's going on. I think if we acknowledge that most people don't know what's going on when they come in to meet with us, and that's true, then folks are pretty good with understanding what they need and absorbing that. Because that's what makes people feel equal, is when we treat them as if we want them to participate fully. So we've got pre-processing and plain language as the two gateways. Okay. So cognitive discomfort is really what we call executive dysfunction. And so I'm not going to do any brain stuff with you guys today, so we won't talk about that. But I've pulled out 3 areas where I think you folks might find people having discomfort or disability to think clearly in your practice and in your practice in your field. And so if there are others that you want to talk about, we can. But I picked planning because planning goes to the ability to be on time, to be organized, to do stuff completely in a way that people have promised to do it. Okay, so we find what I hear often is that folks will complain about the fact that the families they're working with just can't be on time. We ask them to do things, they do part of it, not others. It can be very difficult. And these are what I call our famous families. Do you know? Most of your families fly through what you want to have done, I'm quite sure. But the ones that don't are the troubling ones. They're the ones that we feel badly about because they're not engaging. So I'm going to talk a little bit about planning. I'm going to talk a little bit about judgment, good judgment. What does that mean? How do people acquire good judgment? Because we find some family members who come in and they don't show good judgment. They don't seem to understand the environment. Do you know? They don't seem to understand the pecking order. They don't understand kind of when to talk and when not to, all sorts of judgment issues. And then follow through. I'm going to do it. I really am. Nothing happens, right? In spite of our best efforts. So this has nothing to do with the fact that we're not trying well. It has to do with the fact that their ability to think is a little bit different from ours because of their stress, because of other issues perhaps. Okay? So we talk about planning. Planning is an interesting thing. Those of us who have fully formed frontal lobes, like you guys and me, we're hoping, have learned to plan. And we plan well because we have a lot of balls in the air. But planning, you learned intuitively. No one ever told you that planning is a cognitive backwards experience. And it is. So no one ever, Grandma never said, listen, honey, you're going to plan one day to bake cookies. So you start at the end and you subtract backwards. But that's how we plan. Our brains, yours and mine, learned that by observing the world from the time we were about 4, which is when we begin to have the ability to kind of look at that information. And we learned that, wow, you know what? If I have to be at the Wadsworth Mansion at 9 in the morning, God forbid the traffic crap, right, about stuff. Excuse me to those at home. I got up this morning, let's see, actually I got up at 4 o'clock because we lost power at my house this morning, which was a delight. Came back on before shower time, which was really good for me and you. But I would get up about 6 o'clock. Takes an hour and a half to look this good, just so you know. And then, it's that other 45 minutes to an hour to hear. And so I subtracted time, starting with I have to be here at 8:20, and I subtracted all that time, and I found that I needed to get up around 6. Well, many folks who are limited cognitively, either from a tissue-based perspective or are very stressed, do not get it. And I swear to you, the families that I've worked with over time, and it's been like a lot of years, Once I tell them the secret, they actually are on time after that. It's like nobody ever told them. Do you know? I missed that ticket. And I'll say, you know what, you start at the end. So like, when do you have to be? You have to be here at 3 o'clock for our meetings, and you're having a hard time. Let's explore what goes on. So 3 o'clock, how long does it take? How do you get here? Bus, you know, what's going on? Then do you have to bring the kids? What do you have to do? And so we subtract out. What happens when people are late usually is that they will leave home at the time they have to be with you. Because, you know, and you're thinking, no, here at 10, not home at 10. But for them, it's an overwhelming task. And if you teach it, and so my way of teaching is to always take people's deficits on myself, and that's just a personal strategy of mine. But it seems to work well. So I say to folks, I have a terrible time being on time. And so I've learned, I'm going to share this with you. This is what I've learned, blah, 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 blah. You can try it. See if it works, you know, as opposed to, you know, kind of teaching in a teachy way. It's also very helpful if you want to be equal with someone, if it wants to be an equitable relationship, if you make yourself vulnerable. That will really be helpful. You know, you share something about yourself. There's, you know, and as you get to be my age, there's a lot of stuff I could share that makes me like vulnerable. So I've got a list, you know, we could go there. So planning, if you teach that, it's a strategy I hope you guys leave with. If you have folks who are constantly late or not good planners, take the task and start at the end and go backwards to the beginning. And that's true with tasks as well, academic tasks as well. Judgment. Judgment. She looks at her watch. Judgment is very interesting because good judgment is based solely on past experience. And so we slam people all the time for coming into our ever so middle American 1950s agency experiences, right? And not doing well. And we go, oh, they had really bad judgment. They'd never seen this opportunity before in their lives. Do you know? If I went to a wedding in Bali tomorrow, a traditional Balinese wedding, I'd dress up like a traditional old American woman, and people would say, horrible judgment she has. Doesn't she know she's supposed to be dressed in a different way? Well, I actually have pretty good judgment, but I don't know the rules. I've never been there. And so our families, especially for you folks who work in impoverished areas, you know, in cities, in areas where there's a really diverse culture in terms of experience, many, many times the individuals do not know, and they get slammed for not knowing because we assume they should. They're grown-ups, shouldn't they know? You know, I use my favorite example of this is I'll use the Department of Social Services. Anybody here from there, except me? Okay. Hi. Hi. Where do you work? Town. Oh, town. Oh, town. No, you're good. I'm talking the mothership. You know what I mean? You know. Okay. You know where we all go and stand in line. So the Department of Social Services, State Department of Social Services. I can use that because when I worked for the Bureau, the Department of, which is now the Department of Rehab Services, it was part of the Department of Social Services. So I get to rank on them sometimes. So some poor lady has to go and have her SNAP renewed, right? Her welfare experience renewed. And she has 2 little kids. And she's taken the bus. And she's wrapped the kids up. One's 3, one's just a newborn. She's now standing in that ever so long and lovely line. You've seen it, haven't you, in the Department of Social Services? There are at least 60 people ahead of you. And she finally, after the baby's crying and the little one's hungry and stood in line for an hour and a half, gets to the window, the bulletproof window, don't get me started. Anyway, she gets to the window, the receptionist opens the little window door and says, "We're closed." Because it's 4:30 and God knows, time to go. So 4:30, we're closed. And the lady with the 2 babies and the experience she's just had is reluctant to say thank you, which is exactly what we expect, right? Oh, thank you for the experience of letting me stand in line, have this, and go on. We expect them to say, to be gracious, don't we? Oh, be gracious. Why thank you? Thank you for telling me. And she says, you instead, right? She does. She does. Of course she does, because you would too. And you know what? Here's the thing. While you're saying thank you, that's what you're thinking, right? Right? But you have the judgment not to say it, right? You know, and the impulse control, there's that little voice in your head that goes, uh-oh, you'll never get renewed if you say bad things to the lady at the front. But people who have not had the experience of what's expected, that you're expected when you are demeaned and feeling badly and stressed and need desperately what you're going there for, and then they don't give it to you, you don't know that the trick here, the little words are, you have to be nice anyway, you know, not come from that world. So instead of kind of throwing this lady out, perhaps her social worker can talk with her a little bit, or a caseworker can talk with her a little bit about, you know, next time that happens to you, you can certainly say what you said, but remember your goal. If your goal is to get your SNAP renewed, then maybe there's another way. And so whenever I talk to folks about that, I always say, maybe it's another way. You know, I don't have skin in the game, right? I would like for that person to be able to get through the process. So I'm going to give them some suggestions. It is entirely up to them whether they take them or not. You know, not on me. But I think the suggestions are good, and we tend to jump to conclusions. So judgment, ask people what their experiences have been in the past. I always do. And it's fascinating to find out that they've never had to deal with this kind of a situation before. An aside to that, total aside, but I just need to share with you, the newly impoverished folks are the worst with this judgment thing in the public sector. They're the folks who are us, who in the, you know, in 2008 or so lost everything and are now coming back desperate and desolate, and they have a terrible time getting through the system. And that's because, number one, they don't feel like they should be there, understandably, and number two, they've never been in a public, you know, a public service experience. And we try really hard in public service to make people comfortable, but my goodness, it's an uphill battle. It is. Our environment, our workloads, all of those things. So, and the last one here I want to chat with you about is follow-through. Follow-through is based on memory and experience. I'm looking at this because I had a great, yeah, okie doke, is memory and experience. And so I want to tell you a little story about follow-through and a situation I had. I was doing a consultation. It was actually for DCF. And there was a lady who had been reported to DCF by a school system because her little one was just going into kindergarten. And after, you know, going for the open house and whatnot, which she did go to, the little one never went to school. And so the social worker from DCF had been in and said, you know, you're not sending your kid to school. And she said, no, I'm not. It's right. I'm not sending my kid to school. So good, we agree there, right? I'm not sending my kid to school. And so immediately the process was started, not legally inappropriately, to begin to take the child away because kids need to go to school in our country, right? They do. But no one talked to her a little bit about why, you know, kind of why did that happen? So here's what happened. She was living with her mom and dad in the community where she had grown up. And when she took her little one to school for, you know, to open house, to kind of look around and meet the teacher and all, her little child was going to be having the same kindergarten teacher that she had had. And that teacher tormented her. And she was not going to let that happen to her child. And her solution, because she didn't understand that she could ask for a different teacher, that she could talk with folks about that situation, her solution was to not go, because she wanted to protect her child. Well, so we learn that information, and now the scenario changes. So we want to work with her about, let's practice, let's go together, talk to the school folks, tell them the dilemma. There are other kindergarten teachers. Maybe, you know, your little one can go into another classroom. Little one got in another classroom, went to school every day, didn't have the child taken away. Woohoo, good, win for everybody, right? But again, it was past memory that stops us. So a lot of times with follow-through, there's something underneath that stops us from moving forward. And so for that as well, you know, it's good to kind of inquire. You know, I always think, you know, what's going on is a good response. Unfortunately for us, if you work for any agencies, which of course most of you do, we have timelines, right? Do you have stuff that has to get done in a certain amount of time? And so that's a pressure for us, and then we don't explore. Sometimes we consciously choose not to explore because it's going to take a lot of time. You know? But I'd urge us to do that. So that's all I want to do on cognition. I'm going to move a little to. That's all I'm going to do on cognition. These are 3 of the executive function issues that people struggle with. There are 12 more. This is part of a full day presentation we do on executive functioning. So there's a lot more. If you're ever interested in that, you know, you should look at it. It's kind of fun. So I want to move to emotional discomfort. So if you've got folks who are thinking fairly clearly, and still are emotionally having a hard time about being with us. And so most of the time, cognition and emotion go together. They just kind of shift. Sometimes you know when it's so hard for you to think and get stuff done, and other times you know that it's just emotionally, it's really hard to be in a situation. And for us, it goes back and forth. Most people have both at the same time if they're uncomfortable. So how do we set a situation where people can, in their heads, become emotional? And I make the distinction between emotional discomfort and emotional safe place, because an emotional safe place is actually a physical place. Emotional comfort is in someone's head. Okay, so we want to influence what's in their head. We certainly want to make it a safe and comfortable environment as well. But we want to give people a chance in their heads to relax and to be comfortable. And so what we've learned over time from research, a lot of research on emotional discomfort, is that the one pathway to emotional comfort by a power person, meaning a treat or a professional, you know, someone who's in an environment and offering something, is hopefulness. And hopefulness is a really interesting thing because hope is the elixir for emotional comfort. And so many people, as I start to talk about this, say, oh, I'm hopeful, but what about the family who comes in, you've met them, I'm sure you have, where they come in the door and you go, uh-oh, this is not going to work. Do you know? We do. I worked in rehabilitation with people with disabilities for many, many years, and I had folks who came in who wanted to go to work, who were totally paralyzed, blind, and could not speak, and wanted to go to work. And honestly, first thing that came into my head, even after 36 years in the biz, was, holy Lord, ay, 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 I'm not so sure about this outcome, right? I don't know. Hope doesn't have anything to do with outcome, though. You don't have to be hopeful that they'll succeed. You have to be hopeful that in that moment, you and they will do the best you can together. That's what the hope is. That right now here, when we're together, I'm pretty hopeful that I'm going to do my best, and I'm pretty hopeful that you will too. Okay? That's what the hope is. And that essence of hope comes from working with with the folks who are dying. Because when we work with folks who are dying, honestly, they're going to die. So the outcome is not going to change. What is hopeful for them as we sit in their presence is our hope that in this moment, at this time, at this place in their lives, we can make it better. This moment, not later, this moment. And if you think about it that way, it relieves your conflict about being hopeful for people that you're thinking, yeah, I don't know, you know, I don't know. So hopefulness is that, and what that requires from us, from an emotional perspective, is to really put as much as we can, to really, really, when we enter that room, in any way, leave our stuff at the door to the degree we can. You can't completely. I mean, you can't because we're human, but to the degree that you can, it's really helpful to do that. So rule 2 about hopefulness that's fascinating is that in addition to that, hope is not conveyed by words, which is really interesting. You can talk till the cows go home about how hopeful you are for people. And if you do not have what we call the hopeful face, it will not matter. Because you guys know, don't you? Have you ever been talking to somebody about something that really bothers you? You know, something that's very intense and bothers you, and the person looks at you and smiles, nods, and you want to crack them? Because you don't think they're interested, you don't think they're listening, right? And so, or they say, oh yes, oh my, oh no. So hopefulness is conveyed not by words and also not by smiling. A smiley face is seen as disingenuous unless you smile naturally. Do you know some people have a natural smile? You know, they just have a, yes. Is that?
I'm so sorry.
That's okay, good. Are you, is that okay though? So, smiley face?
That was perfect, but
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
confirmed. I am suspicious of smiling all the time.
Mm.
And I just thought it was me.
No. Thank you for being here. No. So we tend to smile. Smile is a shield often. You know, laughter is not, joy is not, but you know, smile can be. And you know that when people like smile a lot, sometimes you feel like they're being disingenuous. We also know the research tells us that if you scan faces in research studies and they show pictures, people in 20 seconds will tell you whether people are trustworthy or not just by looking at their face. 20 seconds is all it takes. So what is it? What is a hopeful face? A hopeful face is your face at interested rest. Whatever your face is, whatever your face does at interested rest is hopeful. Okay? So there is a caveat to that. And the caveat is this. Oh, I hate to say it. As we age, things droop. Have you noticed? Including your face. And so if you're older, a little smile can be helpful because sometimes, through no fault of our own, as we age, we get the resting bitchy face. And we want to like be able to perk it up a little bit. So it's true. It's so sad. I used to be the person who people would sit next to at airports and tell me their life story when I was a younger woman. Now they don't so much. And clearly it's because I've turned into my old father. As I look into the mirror, it's like, oh my God, I look just like my dad. So a little smile helps. Other than that, it's a restful face. So I'm going to end with just one little story for you. It's a little story that I do around hopefulness that I hope will resonate with you, because the gift of hopefulness, it's also kind of research-based, but I think really exquisitely wonderful, is that when you hope for someone and they do well, your energy is revived. Your sense of why you do the work that you do is revived. It like scrubs away the everyday nonsense of our work. You know, all that administrative stuff, all the stress. And you know, don't you feel great? You feel so good. And so for the last thing that I'm going to do with you today is just, I'm going to ask you to take a little trip with me. It's a different kind of trip. And it has to do, it's really a story of a man that I met in 1980 when I did a psychiatric fellowship in Boston, and in 1980. And I was doing a piece of it was with the Department of Mental Health there and Cambridge City Hospital. And how many of you have heard about supported education as a field? Because you're not in the mental health world. Since the 1980s, the mental health field has begun a process much like supported employment for folks, where people have coaches and stuff. They have a process also called supported education. And so in 1980, a guy named Bill Anthony at Boston University started a program in his psych rehab program where individuals with mental illness would be able to access college but they'd have like a coach with them to kind of help them through, you know, to navigate, not so much the classroom stuff, but the culture, you know, and all of that, so that they could be successful students. And he thought, if that worked at work, maybe it would work with colleges. Well, it has, and so now supported education is a huge movement in this country. It's been going on for about 40 years, and we have a number of providers in Connecticut who do that work. First year, we were starting out, he was starting out, and they began to look around the Boston area for folks who had serious mental illness, who might be good candidates because they wanted to try and see if this program would work. And so I met a fellow who was chosen. He was in his middle age, had done really, really well in school before he became very seriously mentally ill. So he had an Axis I psychiatric mental illness, which usually occurs, that's, you know, the psychosis, major depression, schizophrenia, major bipolar disorder are those kinds of disorders. And they usually occur or start between 17 and 22 when our brains are developing, because they're all tissue-based disorders. So when our brains are developing at that stage, and that's when he became ill. But prior to that time, he loved school, was a real good student. So they said to him, his name was Gaston, like Beauty and the Beast, right? Which was like really cool. And so they asked him if he would be interested in doing this project, and he said, yeah, you know. And he was living in supported housing in a suburb of Boston. So they said, we're going to have somebody work with you. You're going to come on campus, and you're going to go to school. Yay. Okay. So he's all in. And so he started to go to school. And this was what his day was like. His first class was around 10. And he would set his alarm for 4:30 in the morning. And he'd get dressed and showered and whatnot. And he'd sit on his bed from 5 to 6:30. Because what if he didn't get dressed on time and get out the door? So every single day he would do that. And then he would walk to the bus. He'd take a bus. He had to take a bus for a certain number of blocks, and then he'd take the MTA, into Boston, so a couple changes. And he'd get to the college probably by 8:30, 8:45 every day, and he'd sit right outside the professor whose class it was office until 10, because what if he didn't get to class on time? What if he didn't connect with the professor? Plus the fact that our mental health systems train people with mental illness to go sit by the most powerful person in the clinic, which is usually the doctor. So he had that down. So he would sit there and he'd wait. And so for 3 consecutive semesters, Gaston did great at BU. Happy, delighted, every day, same process. But sometimes, for some people, the world is just too hard a place. And so at the end of those 3 semesters, he ended up readmitted to one of the major psychiatric hospitals in Boston. He never left that hospital, and he remained there till he died because his symptoms could not be controlled well. But when he felt well, and when he was able to, you know, to kind of have a moment when he was not demonized by his symptoms, he would talk to people, or he would write in his book about how for 3 consecutive semesters, people he knew at Boston University and in the program had hope for him that he could do okay. And for 3 consecutive semesters of his whole life, he was not mentally ill. People didn't think he was crazy. People didn't think he was homeless. People thought he was a student. He was a student, and it was the most exquisitely wonderful time of his life. Now, when we think about Gaston and his life, by our standards, it was a glowingly unsuccessful life. But if we think about the fact that when I tell his story, if it touches you, if you felt a little something in your stomach, if it made you feel a little tearful, if it related to you, his getting our hope, the hope of those professionals, and sharing his story, that little fire that kind of you felt inside of you is your hope, being rekindled. And that's the reciprocity of hope. That when we hope for someone and their hopefulness touches us and their experience touches us, then we in turn have the energy to be hopeful again. And so when I think about Gaston, because he's been gone now for a period of time, I think to myself, you know, I think, and I hear him say thank you so much, and I hear him write that how thankful he was. I think to myself, you know, here's back at you, buddy, because your life has given us so much. And every time I tell his story, if it touches other people, then our hopefulness is rekindled. And if he knew that his life could touch so many people, he would be so proud. He'd be so proud. So thank you guys for spending time with me today.